Hi everybody. I need a few minutes to share this around. I'm asking you to help share it around if you could. I would appreciate that. And then we'll get started. So thank you for sharing this around to groups of people that you believe need to learn modern money. Especially, that is most important. I'm going to share around as well, and we'll start in a few minutes. All right, thanks for your patience, everyone. I would be grateful if you help share this around. I'm going to take a couple minutes and share it around as well. If you can hear my little boy in the background, please let me know. Don't think you can, but I do. He's playing his iPad while on the phone with his friend. Should be over in not so long. Okay. Copy. Hard to hear. How's it now? Catherine. Hi, Erin. Good to see you. Glad you're here. How do I sound? All right. Test 1, 2, 3. How do I sound? I don't know how to say your name. Forgive me. Carrie? Care? Catherine. How is my sound now? Good. Thank you, Erin. All right. At least one person. Oops. I'm almost ready. I'm just sharing on Twitter and then I will be ready. Okay. Cora? Cora. Am I saying it right? It's a very interesting spelling for pronouncing it Cora. Okay, let's see. Just opening my notes. Okay. All right, welcome everyone. I'm glad that you are back with me. Happy 50th birthday to Catherine. I'm teaching modern money for Catherine's 50th birthday, not because it's what's best. I'm doing it for Catherine. Okay. All right. Reflection of my iPad. Sorry, no solution that I can think of at the moment. Just going to have to deal with it. Doesn't seem horrible. But, Sherry, nice to see you in not Twitter form. Okay. So let's get started. So, actually, I need a pencil. So my equipment is iPad, notes, pencil, sharpener, eraser. That's my equipment here. And Bernie and family. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I am going to teach the basics of modern money. I've done this a number of times now. I have a long way to go before I consider this solid. Certainly a lot of the pieces are solid, but I have a long way to go. Especially this is just so much. And my intention for tonight is to do this as a lesson, as a lecture, a presentation. I want to work towards making this an hour-long presentation. I of course want to have visuals, graphics and charts and whatever. I am not there yet. I need to get to the point where I feel that this is solid. This is my goal is an hour, but it clearly has some distinct sections. So I'm going to do this I believe in 3 sections tonight, and I'm going to stop after each section and read comments and talk for a few minutes, and then I'll proceed to the next section. But I'm hoping the total of all of it is going to be the lecture itself is going to be an hour. So I want to perfect this. Posted something about my relationship. I'll give a very brief thing about that before I get started. So I want to teach this lesson. So something I can sit down with someone one-on-one or with a group, or that I can just teach it as a lecture, and they interrupt me and ask questions and all that, and maybe sometime I can actually give a lecture in front of a larger group. That would be nice. But the bigger point is what I am proposing. It's more than a proposal. It's actually starting now. Jeff Ginter and myself are starting what's called the Real Progressives Modern Money Education Initiative, and the goal is to teach the powerless masses, and that includes progressives, and that includes the disadvantaged. So the disadvantaged are racial, financial, homeless and poverty, and religious and cultural disadvantaged populations. And the first step to do that is to reach and teach the leaders. So my first step towards this was Graham Elwood a few weeks ago now, I guess. That was my first time, real time, teaching it all the way through, like well-designed, reasonably well-designed, and it could not have gone better. It has some, in the article for Graham, there are now some significant corrections that I've gotten through tons of feedback from a lot of people. Overall, it was fine. Overall, it's solid. It could be better and sharper, but overall, accuracy-wise, it was reasonably good. There is a short list of corrections in that article to show how that lesson, some mistakes in it. So Graham Elwood reaches tens of thousands of people on his basically news show. And there's also, Jimmy Dore reaches hundreds of thousands, TYT reaches millions. So that's my first step, is to teach progressive leaders, including media figures, and then disadvantaged communities as well. So Black Lives Matter and so on, the church leaders of these poverty-based groups, support groups, and so on. And then if we can reach them, then the people that they support, we can start to reach them, the masses as well, because they trust the leaders. They don't know us. But if we can gain the trust of the leaders, we have a foot in the door. And also we can make sure that we communicate it in an appropriate and respectful way. So that's the bigger picture of this lesson. So about me, I'll give a brief introduction about me. Actually, I hear my computer beeping with all these comments, and it's going to be beeping like a machine gun, so I'm going to turn off the speaker, so hold on a moment. Okay. So just briefly about me, before I discovered Bernie Sanders, I voted Democrat because I was told to vote Democrat. Democrats were the good guys, Republicans were the bad guys. So I voted, woke up, voted, went back to sleep. That's all I did. I discovered him in August of 2015. I never heard of him before. I left a high-paying job in the beginning of 2016, and I volunteered full-time for him for months. The campaign asked me to run with him. I ran with him in my county on the ballot, on the line. That made him such that he could have a decent spot on the ballot and not be pushed way off to the side. I lost, but I got 12,000 votes. It was very exciting. We actually tried to win. I was a delegate for Bernie Sanders at the convention, and I live streamed a lot of that to show people what it was like to be a Bernie Sanders delegate and how we were treated. And we reached a lot of people, me and a handful of other delegates and some supporters on the outside, and that's what became Citizens Media TV. So more recently, after the convention, I was a finalist for Brand New Congress, one of the first finalists, around 60 people out of 1,500 people nominated across the country. Obviously, I'm not a candidate, but I was a finalist, and I have just entered. I won a write-in campaign, and now I'm in New Jersey. I won a write-in campaign the day before the election. I canvassed some houses with some help of people who know the area and gave me some lists. I got 6 votes. Nobody else got any votes. I'm now a Democratic County Committeeman. So I entered, and I have not had a meeting yet, but they clearly know who I am and what I'm like, so I'm very curious of what's going to happen. So that's about me. So now, modern money. Modern money, Eric Nachman, my cousin, is watching me. Hello, my cousin, Eric Nachman. That's a nice surprise. So modern money. There are 2 stages to learning modern money. The first stage is the Mindbenders. The first stage is getting your mind around modern money, because we have all been miseducated. The vast majority of Americans have been completely miseducated on how our economic system works. And what I'm good at doing is taking people to get rid of that wrong information and replace it with the correct information, to at least open your mind to the concept of modern money, to get rid of the myths and misconceptions and the time wasters. And then I pass you off to the people who are way more experienced than I am, because I never heard of modern money before February. So I am in no position to be able to go deeper than that. But what I'm good at, and hopefully going to get better at, is getting people over that initial hump and opening people's minds to the concepts. So I'm asking you to please be open-minded during this conversation. When we're done, you should be as skeptical as you need to be. You should do your homework. You should do whatever you feel is necessary to determine the truth for yourself. You shouldn't just believe me. But during this conversation, I'm asking you to be open-minded. Ask questions, please. I'm going to do this in, I believe, 3 sections. And after each of the 3 sections, I'm going to answer questions and go through some comments and take a break and talk with you. Because just going through the whole thing is just too long and too much. Okay, so modern money. Bernie Sanders, most of us here, I believe, are progressives. I'm sure that there are some that might consider themselves sort of Democrats as opposed to progressives, but most of us here are progressives, I'm guessing. And Bernie Sanders taught all of us that the root of all evil is money in politics. Money in politics is the root of all evil. And that for me was like the first eye-opener, the first waking me up kind of realization. And that was the kind of thing in meeting Bernie and learning that. I really do feel like that's when I became a grown-up. So Bernie Sanders taught us that money in politics is the root of all evil. He showed us why and how our system is so very corrupt. He showed us and described to us what we should have in order to, be the society that we should and could be. He taught us how to envision what the world could be like. So Medicare for all, free college, job guarantee, living wage, all that stuff is what we need to have in order to have the society that we all deserve to have. Modern money is no less profound. And what Bernie Sanders taught us what the world is like, and that's wrong, how the world is wrong, what the world could be like. But what I think he did not teach us is how we actually get those things. And modern money is what teaches us why we don't have those things and why and how we can actually get those things. So it is no less profound. Modern money is the second eye-opener, waking up kind of realization that I came across. Actually, I'll just tell you the third as a quick aside, which is manufactured consent. That's the third. Just the depth of how corrupt our society is there is no bottom. There's no bottom. So, okay. So we're going to start with a scenario. All right? And for those who've already heard this is going to be a lot more efficient than before. So, scenario. You are a multi-millionaire, and you are the parent of twins. And your twins are about to have their birthday. So you ask them both, what do you want for your birthday? And they tell you some pretty substantial gifts, but nothing, a big surprise. One of them tells you they want a big screen TV, and the other one tells you they want a video game system, a new video game system. And, you know, this is what they've been telling you forever, so it's not like you're surprised about this. Excuse me. So, you know, it would make them very happy. They've both been passionate about it for a while. This is what they've been telling you. And so you go to the store, excuse me. You go to the store. You are a multi-millionaire parent. You go to the store, you do some comparisons, you look around, and you realize, unfortunately, you can only afford just one. You can only afford just one, and it's unfortunate. But, you know, both your children, it's very important to both your children to have these gifts, and you can only afford just one. So you go to your children, and you tell them, I'm really sorry. I really wish I could give you both a gift, but given our money, given our budget, I can only afford to give you just one, only one of you a gift. Now, of course, the smart thing to do, if you were a middle-class parent and you genuinely couldn't afford it, you would say maybe, you know, lower your standards for both of you, but let's just go with this for now. So this is what we're going to do. You, the multi-millionaire parent, tells your twins. You say, you need to convince me, since we can only afford one, you need to convince me. You need to show me the pros and cons. You need to show me why, demonstrate why you're so passionate, why, given our limited family budget, the limited amount of money that we have, of why you should get your gift. And of course you don't say it, but of course that also means effectively why your brother shouldn't get their gift. So you are pitting your children against each other, even though you're not explicitly saying so. So your children work incredibly hard to analyze and research this, why they deserve their present, given the money, the budget, the family. They spend like a month researching, reading sources, consulting with experts, and just really working hard at this. So a month later, right before their birthday, they hand you in their research papers. A lot of work put into this. You read their papers, and you decide, for whatever reason, that the one about the big screen TV is just, it's better. It's better. The other one's not so bad, but the TV one's better, so you decide, I'm going to get the TV. You did a good job. You also did a good job, but I just decided that, you know, this is the one. So you buy the TV, and you say, you know, you got to share it. I'm not trying to be unreasonable. You have to share it and all that. And it's upsetting because you know how important this gift is to both of them. You know how important the other child wants that video game system, and it is upsetting that you can't give both to both of your children. And you're a multi-millionaire, and this is insanity. If you were a middle-class parent, maybe we could understand this. Maybe it actually makes sense that you can afford both. And again, I said the lowering the standards will make smaller gifts, but just put that aside for a moment. As a middle-class parent, that sort of makes sense. as a multi-millionaire parent, why in the world would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you make your children do this? Why would you even bring up the topic of affordability? Why would you bring up the topic of money? Why would you make your children do this analysis to put all of this effort into analyzing something that doesn't matter? You can easily afford a gift for both of your children. You could easily afford anything and everything you want, and yet you make your children work so hard to convince you that your hard-earned money must go to them, and therefore it can't go to the other because you only have so much. You are choosing to give one of your children a present. You are choosing to not give your other child a present, but you are pretending that that decision is dependent, that that decision is linked together. But the truth is that it's not. The truth is that you can afford anything you want, and it is sinister that you would, if you are a good faith act, it is hard to find a situation where you would be a good faith actor to do this. So the important part I want you to remember here is that these two decisions of getting a gift for this child, not getting a gift for this child, you are only pretending that they're related. You are pretending that your resources, that your money is limited. You are pretending that your money is limited. You could easily get both of them. So that's a scenario. Those who have heard the previous versions of that, I'd like to know if that's, more digestible. Okay. So, part 2. The Pony for All Act of 2018. So for a few minutes, I want to take a completely ridiculous scenario totally seriously, just for a few minutes. So Hillary Clinton, in her book to Bernie Sanders, said, basically, it's nice that you want to give everybody a pony, Bernie, but everybody would love, I'm getting notifications, I got to turn this off. Mute, sorry. It's nice that you want to give everybody a pony, Bernie. Everybody would love to have a pony, but how you gonna pay for it? How are you gonna pay for it? So this is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous situation. Of course, it is completely insane to give everybody in the country a pony, but let's pretend. And I'm telling you that it is genuinely possible that if we decided to do it, that we genuinely could do it. We could give every man, woman, and child in the country a literal, biological, actual pony. So hypothetical, our country, our government is no longer corrupt, money is no object, and President Trump has committed to signing the Pony for All Act of 2018 when it's ready. So I want to determine with you, what would it take if money was no object? What would it take to give all 320 million Americans a pony? So, the first step, logistically, step by step, what would it take? And clearly, the first step, the most critical thing, is our supplies of ponies. How many ponies do we have in the United States? Very roughly speaking, maybe 500,000. How many people do we have in the United States? 320 million. We have a problem. We must take our supply of ponies and expand it so that it is now one for every single person in the country. So mommy and daddy ponies are going to have to do their thing over and over and over again. So how long will that take? We have to determine the gestation period of, ponies inside mommy's bellies, and I am a father. It is hard for me not to use innocent words like that. So how long is the gestation period for ponies? How long do they have to wait after birth to be able to do it again? How long will it take to create from 500,000 ponies down up to 320 million? I have no clue, but I'm going to guess 10 years. That feels roughly reasonable. Clearly a week ain't going to do it. Tomorrow ain't going to do it. A month is not going to work. There's no way a year would work. So I'm going to go with 10 years. That feels roughly reasonable to me. So now mommies and daddies are doing the thing and they're starting to reproduce and duplicate. That brings up issues. Now we need more land. Now we need more fencing. Now we need more shelters where they sleep. Now we need more food. Now we need more horseshoes. We need them to be exercised. We need them to have health care if they get sick. That means we have to educate blacksmiths, we have to educate breeders, we have to educate caretakers and veterinarians. That takes time. So that's an effect of dramatically increasing the amount of ponies that we have. And now we have to take these ponies and start distributing them around the United States. Every single person in the country, all over the place, needs a pony. So now we have to distribute the ponies. We have to distribute the supplies. We have to distribute the food and the blacksmiths and veterinarians and so on. Like to distribute the labor. So now we have enough ponies. They're all ready and waiting to go. And now the citizens are going to pick them up. They can't just pick them up. Where do they pick them up? What do they do when they get home? We have to prepare. They have to be ready to prepare their homes. They have to be trained in how to take care of a pony. They have to have stores where they can buy supplies. They have to have, veterinarians and access to blacksmiths and so on. All these ancillary industries, all these dependent industries. And finally, 320 million ponies, when they die, that's got to be considered. What happens? Not only how to dispose, but I guess we have to replace them with another one. So that's how we get a pony for every single American. That's how we get it. If money was no object. We have to consider the entire life cycle. And I'm sure I have only touched the surface. The whole life cycle. And all of these things that I've been mentioning. Labor, blacksmiths, veterinarians, ponies, horseshoes, yes. Fences and food and distribution and all these things are the real resources necessary to make this happen. The real resources necessary. So how much would now that we have the real resources in order, organized and ready to go, how much money would this take? And it would take whatever we think is fair. So the government might say $10 billion poured into the economy plus another $1 billion every single year or something. So they could pour $10 billion into the economy on year one and make that process start. All of these things happen. But what happens if we try and do this in a week or in a month or a year? We really try, and we pour $10 billion into the economy. What would happen? It would not work. No matter how much money we pour into this, it would not work if our real resources could not handle it. And we have just determined that it could not in a year or a week or a month. It might be able to in 10 years, though. That's reasonable. So it doesn't matter how much money we pour into this. If our real resources can't handle it, that's the only thing that matters. So if our productive capacity could handle it, that's what matters. So our productive capacity couldn't handle it in a year or a week or a month. It can handle it in 10 years. And the point of this is that money doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is real resources, our productive capacity. So, real resources are things in the ground. Coal, steel, or iron ore, I guess. Things in the ground, things that grow. Animals, human labor. And what I find the most unusual, but no less important, is time. So those are real resources. Money doesn't matter. Okay, so the last part before I take a break is you have a paper dollar bill. And I want to ask you where that paper dollar bill, where did that come from? So you got your dollar bill from your paycheck. Or if you're like Graham Elwood or someone like that, you got it from like a patron, your monthly patron, or from a merchant, someone who purchased your merchandise. But let's just say your paycheck, you got it from your paycheck. That comes from your company. Okay, where did your company get that dollar bill? The company got the dollar bill by selling a product. So they got it from a customer. Where did that customer get it? They got it from their paycheck, from their company, and on and on and on and on and on and on. And at some point in that path, a law was created and money was poured into the economy to implement that law. And that dollar bill ultimately was created, and I know that I'm still missing some of the subtleties here, but this is close. That dollar bill was ultimately created by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve created that money. And the Federal Reserve was instructed to create that money by the Treasury. The Treasury was instructed by a law, and the law was created, which was originally a bill, as written by the Congress, the United States Congress. That is where money comes from. The United States dollar comes from the United States Congress, the legislative branch. So the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Congress is the monopoly currency issuer of the United States dollar. Everyone else, except for the Congress, is a currency user. Me, you, companies, households, municipalities, states, countries, every other country in the world, China, Russia, we are all currency users. We are all in the same position. We have different amounts of money, but we are all currency users. We are dependent on the United States Congress to create the money for us. So again, Congress writes a bill, writes $10 billion into the Pony for All Act of 2018, writes $10 billion, and that is how money is born. That bill is passed into law, signed by President Trump, triggers the Treasury, triggers the Federal Reserve, creates a new line in a spreadsheet, and that is almost exactly true. If not, maybe it is actually true. Creates a new line in a spreadsheet, the Pony for All Act of 2018, $10 billion. And then under that is broken down into, for example, one line under that might be $300 million for a breeding company in California. So that $300 million would go from the Federal Reserve to the California State Reserve, to the Wells Fargo bank that company has an account in, and then that company is now legally obligated to implement their part of the law. And that is how money gets from the Congress to the people. So money is born when Congress writes a number into a bill and it's passed into law. So a currency user could create the money. They could try. And if they get caught, they will go to federal prison for counterfeiting. So, me and you, we cannot spend money until we get income. We have to get a paycheck. We have to get something that we make purchased in order to spend. We are dependent on. Income is a prerequisite for us to spend. Okay? That's not true with the United States Congress. The Congress must spend before they can tax. I'm giving a little preview here. So when the federal government spends, when the federal government writes $10 billion into a bill, that is no different than to say that the federal government creates $10 billion. I said that opposite, didn't I? Let me say that again. When the federal government writes $10 billion into a bill, they are creating money. And that is exactly the same thing as saying that the federal government spends $10 billion. To the federal government, the word spend and the word create mean exactly the same thing. For us, they are totally different. Totally different. So just to finish this out, the creation of the dollar. The United States Congress pretty much creates a dollar, and there is bank creation of money, but I'm not getting into that, and I frankly don't really understand it so much. I just know the very bare minimum of that. But the Congress, high-powered money, can create the dollar no different than a child drawing a dollar bill on a piece of construction paper. No different than a child drawing a $1 trillion bill on a piece of construction paper. They can do it whenever they want, for whatever they want, and how much they want, for whatever amount they want. And they're the only ones that are allowed to do it. It would be foolish to create an infinite amount of money. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't. That doesn't mean that you couldn't. We just talked about the pony thing, where it would be irresponsible to create so much money that to force, ponies to be available to everyone in the country in a week. That obviously wouldn't work. That is beyond what our real resources and our productive capacity can handle. But that doesn't mean that the rules still say that they could create the money infinitely. They have the ability to do that. There's rules. You can use rules to do good. You can use rules to do evil. And if you're a good faith actor, you won't create money beyond what your productive capacity, your real resources can handle. So we are a fiat currency. The United States is a fiat currency. And that's just what we've been saying. They're a monopoly currency issuer. They can create money whenever they want, for whatever they want, and however much they want. And they're the only ones that can do it. A fiat currency means that all of that plus the United States can do all of that plus it is not backed by anything physical. It is not backed by gold. And we have not been backed by gold. Our currency has not been backed by gold since August of 1971, when Nixon took much of the world off of the gold standard. And there is another instance back at the end of the Depression till the end of World War II that we went off of the gold standard as well, but just our country. We're going to go into that in a few minutes. So I'm going to ask one question, and before we answer that question, I'm going to take a look through your comments and answer anything that you might have. So my question to you is, and I should say, that creation of the dollar bill on a piece of construction paper, our money, our currency is a game. It's a social construct. It's a decision. The dollar itself doesn't have any value. Okay, so my question to you, does a monopoly currency issuer, someone who can create as much as they want, whenever they want, for whatever they want, and they're the only ones that are allowed to do it, does someone in that position, the only ones in the world that can do that, does someone in that position need any income? If you could create the money as much as you want, whenever you want, for whatever you want, and you were the only one in the world that was allowed to do it, and everyone had to accept your money to buy stuff, would you need any income? And the answer is, I hope you can understand it now, the answer is that no, you don't. Okay, so let me take a break and take a look at your comments. Actually, I'm going to look on my iPad, it's easier. Take a drink. Okay. Give me a moment, find the comments here. I'm looking at my notes on my iPad. I gotta switch to it. Okay. Let's see. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like I can go too far back. First comment I see is Aaron Taylor's yes, money creation on a spreadsheet by the federal government. So unfortunately, it looks like I'm missing some stuff. So if there's something you want me to see before that, then please write it again, because the live stream only lets me see so many. So, Jack Archer, yo, serious, real legislation needs to be written. We the people must be aware, educated, and demand that Congress pass shit other than the post office names. My children in the other room, but FFS. When Congress passes a bill and then POTUS signs into law, then money is created. Correct. Correct. It is not created when the number's written into a bill. It's not created because a bill might not be passed. But I like that imagery. But yes, you're correct. It's not created until it's passed into law, until it's signed by the president. Actually, paper notes are printed by a division of the Treasury, the Bureau of Printing and Engraving. This is Mark Fabian. The notes are exchanged for digital dollars in private bank reserve accounts and do not add money to the supply. Okay, so I have a little bit of the technicalities of that pathway from the government to the people, a little bit off. I will learn that. Thank you. Good explanation of fiat currency. Thank you, Aaron. Lots of compliments, and I appreciate that. It's very, very nice. Okay. Anything else? Bretton Woods in the 1940s. We went off the gold standard. We went off the gold standard of the United States. But in 1971, I don't know if it's accurate to say the whole world. I mean, that can't be true. But a number of countries went off the gold standard in August of 1971. Let's see. Anything else? Okay. Section 2. Last chance. Section 2. So does a monopoly currency issuer need income? They don't. They don't. So, since the federal government does not need any income, then why does it borrow? And why does it collect taxes? And I want to just take a quick aside. I am interested in improving this. This needs to be improved. But, I need to take it step by step. So I would love to look at feedback. Okay. So if the federal government does not need any income, as we just determined, why does it borrow and why does it collect taxes? Someone's knocking at my window. Give me a moment. Excuse me. I'm on the live stream. Excuse me. All right. Little boys, forgive me. Okay, why do we borrow and why do we collect taxes? So borrowing, I can only speak a little bit on, but borrowing for the federal government is really no different than this silly example. I'm watching, I genuinely went to the highest scoring World Series game in history. It was like 25 to something in 1993. And I also listened to another game like a couple years after that was like 21-2 or something. So imagine the Philadelphia Phillies call up the Pittsburgh Pirates, and apparently the Pittsburgh Pirates don't have a lot of scoring, or anyway, they call up the Pittsburgh Pirates and they say, listen, we have a particularly high-scoring game, and we need to put some points on the board. Could you please lend us some? We ran out. I mean, that's really silly. It's really silly. The points on a board are a social construct and a choice and a decision. There is no bucket of points in the back office of the Philadelphia Phillies. It is very similar to say that the United States borrows from China when the United States is the only one that can create the money. So borrowing does happen, but borrowing doesn't mean nearly what we think it means. It is just some technical accounting thing that I'm not even sure what it is, but I know that it's not because we need money, speaking of the federal government. So why do we collect taxes? Why do we collect taxes? So this is the one thing, if you remember nothing else, this is the one thing I want you to remember. And that is, federal taxes do not fund federal spending. This phrase. Federal taxes do not fund federal spending. Federal spending funds federal taxes. That's what I want you to remember. Okay? Fix this. And I learned that, I understand it came from Ellis Winningham. I didn't know it came from him, who is Real Progressive's Director of Economic Policy. Apparently that's who it comes from. He told me that's where it comes from. But that is a very interesting phrase. Federal taxes do not fund federal spending. Federal spending funds federal taxes. So I want to be clear that most people, this is sort of the critical entry point into modern money. It is not the beginning by any means. But this is where I think people's awareness is. And so this helps them enter into modern money, and then they can go backwards to the beginning and so on. So federal taxes are very important. They are very important, but they are not important because we need their money. They're not used for that at all. They're not needed for income. So why are they needed? So first, let's just briefly say how taxes are collected, not why, just exactly mechanically, logistically, how does it work? So let's say that you pay $1,000 in taxes. Then let's say that you pay it in paper bills. You mail in an envelope of paper bills, $1,000. Without exaggeration, without joking, it is shredded. And shredded money is sold as souvenirs. But more commonly, we pay it electronically. So we send in our tax return. It says a number on it with a bank account number and routing number. And what that does is it, roughly speaking, it authorizes the federal government to reach into your bank account and lower your balance by $1,000. They don't do anything with the money. They don't raise anything on their side by $1,000. The only thing that they do is they take your tax return and they put it into a filing cabinet. So they have a way of knowing how much you've paid. But they don't do anything with that money. It is just notated in that filing cabinet or on that computer and in a folder. Okay. So, reason number one, there's 3 reasons why the federal government collects taxes, why we collect federal taxes. And reason number 1, first and foremost, is that it drives the currency and drives the economy. Okay? Now, if you don't know modern money, that will be completely meaningless to you until we've never been taught it. So I'm going to teach this with an analogy. So I have 2 little boys, as I guess you could tell. My older one turned 12 yesterday. My younger one turned 9 just about a week ago. And my wife and I sat down with them and we had a talk. And we said to them, you have been doing chores your whole lives and it has never been a problem. You have just done them without we just ask and you just do it. But something has happened over these past few weeks and all these past few months. And now you've been dragging your feet and whining, and things are just, why is it so difficult to get the things done that need to be done? Why is this so difficult? So Mommy and I, taking out the trash. We need the trash to be taken out. Making your bed, cleaning your room, cleaning up from dinner. We need these things to be done. Mommy and I cannot do everything. We just can't handle everything. We are too busy. So we have made a decision. Number 1, if you don't do your chores, you're grounded for a week. That's number 1. Number 2 is we're going to give you allowance. And their eyes light up. Ooh, how much? And so I say to them, I'm going to give you 10 business cards. And I pull out boxes and boxes from my old job of old business cards. And I say, 10 business cards for you. We'll start today. 10 business cards for you, 10 business cards for you. And they look at me and they say, but what about money? I want money. I don't want your business cards. And I say, well, you could use it to buy things off of each other to if you don't want your bed, if you want your bed to be made for a few days and you can't do it, so you ask the other one to do it and you pay him 3 business cards. Or you want to borrow his iPad. You'll say, I'll pay you 2 business cards if I can use your iPad for 30 minutes. Or if you want me and mommy to drive you somewhere, saying, can I pay you 2 business cards to drive me to my friend's house? And they say, well, what about the movies? Can we buy a movie? And I say, no, I'm sorry, you can't do that. What about an ice cream truck? They say, sorry, no. And they say, well, what about candy at the store? And I say, well, unfortunately, you can only use your money in our house. You can't use your money outside of this house. And they tell me that I don't want to do this. I don't like this. I want money. I don't want your business cards. I don't want to do this. And say, well, unfortunately, we're doing it. And every 4 weeks, so every 1 week I give you 10 each, and every 4 weeks, you have to pay me 15. You have to pay me taxes. And they're just incredulous. Why in the world are you doing this? This is stupid. I don't care about your business cards. I am not doing this. I am not paying any taxes. I don't care about your business cards. And I go, fine, you don't have to pay taxes. But if you don't, you're grounded for a month with no allowance. And they say, fine, I'm going to the copy store and I'm going to make 1,000 copies of your business cards, and then I won't have to worry about this anymore. And I say, fine. And then you'll be grounded for 6 months with no allowance. And they go, well, maybe I'll pay you with money if with US dollar bills if I'm struggling or whatever. I'm sorry, you must pay allowance in my currency, in my business cards. And now they care about my business cards. And now they care about the money because I make them care about the money. So, and they care. So I have made my children care about my business cards, about my currency that only I am allowed to create. And now my children genuinely do buy things off of each other, making beds half hour off my iPad, take out the trash as a favor, I'll pay you. They genuinely do pay me to drive them somewhere. And now I can be in a position where if we have visitors coming over, I can say, both of you get 5 extra business cards because I got a lot of work that's got to get done. So my children, the currency users, care about the business cards. Me as the currency issuer, I don't care about the business cards. Yes, I am using it to control my children, but I'm a good faith actor and I'm not using it to abuse them. I am using it because I need things to be done. My wife and I need things to be done, cleaning up and taking care of the house and so on. I need my real resources to be used in a way that is beneficial to our household. So that is what's called driving the currency and driving the economy. So the United States Congress, the people, the currency users, me, you, households, companies, municipalities, states, and countries, China, Russia, we are currency users. We care about the money. We care about the money. We must find income in order to pay taxes. If we don't get a job in order to get US dollars, we will go to jail if we don't pay our taxes or something confiscated from us. We care about the money. The United States Congress doesn't. They care about it from the control point of view, but let's assume that they're good faith actors. What they care about is the real resources, is that the people do what's necessary for the good of the country. They care about making sure that their real resources are utilized properly. So at the beginning, when the country was started, we need troops to defend the country. We need buildings built. We need things cleaned. We need trees chopped down, whatever it is. Okay, so that's what it means to drive the currency and drive the economy. Number 2, reason for taxes. There's 3 reasons. Number 2 is to control inflation. Now, taxes are not the primary tool for controlling inflation, but they are a valuable tool for controlling inflation. I don't know if primary is what I said is correct or not, but taxes are a valuable tool for controlling inflation. And I'm going to describe this with an example. So during World War II, we offered war bonds to the people. Why did we do that? Because car companies were taking all of their resources, steel, rubber, plastic, and so on. And instead of making new cars, they were instead using them to make tanks and ships and planes and artillery. This is very close to true, if not exactly true, that not a single car was created during World War II. A single new car was created during World War II. The money in people's pockets, however, roughly speaking, the money in people's pockets was the same, though, as it was the year before. And roughly speaking, the demand for new cars was the same. So now we have all of this same demand, but the number of new cars has now gone down to zero, or close to zero. So what's going to happen? All of this demand for new cars, and there's not enough new cars to handle it. Not enough real resources, not enough productive capacity. So what are our options? Because if we let this situation go unchecked, the prices of cars is going to go crazy. So we need to either lower demand, or we need to raise supply, or we need to do a combination of both. During World War II, we did not have the option to raise supply. We had to fight the war. So we offered war bonds to the people. And we said, however much you want, let's say $1,000. You buy a war bond, we'll hold your money for 10 years. We're going to fund the troops. That's what it was advertised for. Help fund the troops. Help fund the war effort. Give us your $1,000 and we will fund the troops and fund the war effort. But we now know that the federal government doesn't need any income at all. So it's not true to say that it funded the troops or funded the war effort or funded anything. What it did was, for the people that spent $1,000 into a war bond, that $1,000 did not go towards purchasing a car. So we reduced demand because people chose to, instead of buying a car, to give the money to the government, which was going to hold it for, say, 10 years, and at the end of 10 years, you would get the money back plus 5% interest. So that money was not used for anything. It was removed from the economy to reduce demand. So, taxes are the same thing, very similar. Taxes, when you pay your taxes, your money is removed from the economy. The differences are that war bonds are optional, they are temporary, and they provide a bonus, 5%, whatever it is. Taxes are required, they are not optional. The time that money is held by the government is infinite, and of course there's no bonus. But they're the same concept. It's removing money from the economy. So it's important to define what inflation is. Inflation is not when the price of ponies go up. It is not when the price of gas goes up. It is not when the price of bread goes up or the price of cars goes up. That's not inflation. Inflation is when the price of everything goes up. Literally everything in the country goes up and continues to go up. It is a macroeconomic phenomenon. Inflation is a macroeconomic phenomenon. So if we tried to do the Pony Act in a month, that would not work. We could pour as much money as we wanted. And that would cause the price of ponies to skyrocket. That might cause a black market of ponies where they sell stuff for ridiculous amounts. But that's not inflation, because that even a single industry going up, or even the ancillary industries, all of that stuff going up is nowhere near the entire economy. So just to emphasize, inflation is a macroeconomic phenomenon when every product goes up and continues to go up. Okay, last reason number 3, and then after this I'm going to take my second break and see what feedback you might have. So reason number 3 for taxes is imposing moral decisions. Okay? So we can raise taxes to discourage behaviors. And we can lower taxes to encourage behaviors. So we might lower taxes on cigarettes. I said that wrong. We might raise taxes on cigarettes because we want to discourage people from smoking too much. We don't want to raise them a crazy amount. We don't want people to, we are okay if people smoke some. We are not okay as a society. We decide that we are not okay with people smoking too much. So we raise taxes enough so that they might do it some, but they don't do it excessively. Same with alcohol, same with gambling, same with all vices. We could tax activities that cause pollution because climate change is, we're all going to die. So we might tax that excessively to try and really put a stop to it. We could also tax the wealthy because income inequality at the levels that we currently have are immoral. I'll go back to that one. Lowering taxes, we could lower taxes to encourage behavior. We could lower taxes to encourage gym memberships. We can make gym memberships, if you buy a gym membership, then your taxes go down. If you buy an electric car, your taxes go down, or the taxes on that car could go down, could be lower. The taxes on solar panels could be lower. So we could lower taxes to encourage behaviors. So back to income inequality. We could raise taxes on the rich in order to lower income inequality, because there is nothing wrong with being rich. There's nothing wrong with being rich, successful, the American version of success. You could be as a society, we might decide that 300 times as wealthy as the average American is fine. But we as a society might decide that more than that. And then you're not just getting wealthy by, being ethical. You're starting at some level, it reaches a point where you are getting more and more wealthy by extracting it from the well-being of others. And then at the immoral levels that we have today is that it is so immoral, it is so unequal that the wealthy can buy the governmental officials with their pocket change, and therefore create the laws, and then creating a negative cycle where that becomes easier. So taxing the rich, so we say, maybe as a society we decide that we'll say $500 million that's fine, enjoy it, have fun with it, go nuts, buy a yacht with a yacht inside of it, with a little yacht inside of it. But once you reach that threshold, once you exceed that threshold and you have more than $500 million, now we're going to tax that part of it 90% because you are too powerful. You have too much power. You should not be able to buy the government. We're not taxing all of their income at 90%. We are only taxing what we as a society decide is the obscene part of their income. So we tax the wealthy because it is moral and just and right. We do not tax the wealthy because we need their money. Because as we've already determined, the United States government does not need any income because they create the money for all federal programs. All federal programs do not need money because money is created whenever something is needed for those programs. So that's all. So driving the currency and driving the economy is the purpose of the currency. It forces people to use it. And then a use for the economy, an example use for the economy is to control inflation, and another example use for the economy is to impose moral decisions. So that's the end of that section, and I'll take a look at your comments again. And I hope, it looks like I can see, gotta kill it, look again. Okay, take a drink. Uh, yes. That's how, I need to write that down. Sherry Resin just said, that undermines the essential point that household budgets are not the same as federal budgets, and that's how they trick us. That's how they trick us, because they never educated us, and they use that ignorance against us by pretending that the federal government, their economy, is exactly the same as our economy, because it's all we know, it's all we have in our awareness. So we assume that the federal government is in the same position. That's how they trick us. That's why they say, pretty much every myth and misconception and lie that we hear is centered around that the federal government is in the same economic position as the currency issuer is in the same economic position as all currency users. And that is not true. That is so far off. And all of these things are based around that misconception. My business card analogy with my boys, the allowance that came from that was inspired by Warren Mosler's business card analogy, where he says he's in some conference and he says to the people that I'm going to give you each a business card, and that's now money. Congratulations. And everyone's like, oh, I don't care. And then he said, yeah, but you're not going to be able to leave unless you give the security guard that has a machine gun a business card. And now people care about the business card. So that's how my analogy with the allowance was inspired. Does he do that? No, it was just some talk he gave where I heard that. No, it is not. I'm pretty sure it's not in his book. China as a currency issuer. I don't know if this is to me, Mark Fabian. Better to use member states of the European Union who gave up their individual monetary sovereignty for the euro. Yeah, I was told that the euro is not a fiat currency because something like the people are not voted in or something, so I'm not sure about that. But clearly the Greece and all the member states are currency users, and the euro is a currency issuer. I thought it was accurate to say that they're a fiat currency. The euro is a fiat currency, but something's different about it. Let's see. A lot of here's how it works is good. Okay, Sherry, I will look at that. I would actually be interested in talking with you when we are done to get more in depth in that with your 3 criticisms, which I'm interested in hearing more about, but I'd like to take that to the side. It's too much right now. Okay. Anything else? All right. That looks like it. So we are on to the final part. We're on to the final part. Okay. Actually, Sherry, if you wouldn't mind, I believe we are friends on Facebook, so if you wouldn't mind private messaging me, we can talk. I'd like to hear more of what you think. Okay, next part. The federal debt. So now we're getting into these household budget. Okay, federal debt. So all of these are centered around the lie or the misconception, the misunderstanding that the federal government, that we think that the federal government is just like our households, that they need income before they can spend because that's what our situation is. We now know that that's not the case. Only currency users need to worry about income. So the debt. If you are a currency issuer, you're the monopoly currency issuer. You're the only one that can create it. You can create it whenever you want, for whatever you want, and how much you want. And you're the only one that's allowed to do it. What does it mean to be in debt? Who do you owe US dollars to if no one else in the world can create it and you can create as much as you want? What does it mean to be in debt? So the debt is just an incredibly misleading word as far as the national government's concerned. What the debt technically is, what it actually is the total sum of money that has been spent into the economy, the total sum of money that has been created by the federal government, spent into the economy, that has not yet been taxed back. Okay? That's what it technically is. So from the beginning of the country, all of the money that has been spent into the economy that has not yet been taxed back. But what it more realistically, concretely means, something that we can get our heads around more easily, is that the national debt is the total amount of money that is in our investments, our bank accounts, and our wallets. Every currency user, China, Russia, all the way down to me and you, municipalities and companies and states, every one of us, if we put all of our bank accounts and investments and money in our wallet and in our wallets in a big pile, that's the national debt. That's the national debt. It is our value. It's our value. It's what we're worth. It's how much money we have at our disposal. So why do we call it the national debt? National debt implies that we owe it to somebody. But in this situation, what does that mean? Who do we owe it to? Who do we pay it back to? The debt clock in New York says $21 trillion. The national debt is $21 trillion, and someday we're going to have to pay it back. Pay it back to who? For what purpose? $21 trillion. And even if we did, the federal government can draw a $21 trillion bill on a piece of paper. Piece of construction paper, done, it's gone. But who would it pay it to? And it says on that debt clock, it says every man, woman, and child owes an average of $68,000 towards the national debt. It's got to be paid back someday. And what that actually means is that the average American has an average of $68,000 in their investments and bank accounts and wallet. That's what it means. So the debt is incredibly misleading. It is our money. It's our value. So that's the debt. And now, so the debt is from the beginning of time till now. The deficit, surplus, and balanced budget are this year only. So the debt is like a video, and the debt and the debt is like a video over time. The deficit, surplus, and balanced budget are a snapshot for 1 year. So for us, surplus, balanced budget, and deficit. What is a balanced budget for us? What is a balanced budget? I have $100 for this week's everything, groceries and gas and everything. And at the end of the week, I budget $100 for this week. At the end of the week, I spend exactly $100. I have done exactly what I budgeted. I have a balanced budget. I didn't spend an extra dime. I didn't, underspend at all either. I spent exactly what I planned. That is responsible. I was responsible because I budgeted and stuck with my budget exactly. Surplus. I budgeted $100 as a currency user. I budgeted $100, and I planned on spending $100 this week on groceries and gas and everything. And I only spent $90. So I have $10 left over. I have a surplus. I was extra responsible. I have money left over. And a deficit. I budgeted $100. At the end of the week, I had to spend an extra $10. I had to dip into my savings and spend an extra $10. I spent $110. So I went a little over budget. So that's, I wasn't quite as responsible this week. I was irresponsible because I didn't budget properly. I spent more than I have. Okay, so the surplus is responsible. The balanced budget is responsible. The deficit is irresponsible. But let's talk about this for the currency issuer, the monopoly currency issuer, the Congress, the federal government. Balanced budget. I spend $100 into the economy. In April, I tax back exactly the same thing, $100. So I have a balanced budget. I spend $100 into the economy and I tax $100 back. Why would I do that as the federal government? Because I don't need income. I mean, there's reasons to tax, like we just discussed, controlling inflation and imposing moral decisions. But am I really taxing 100% of what I spent into the economy back? That doesn't seem to make sense because the federal government doesn't need any income. So in order to pay taxes, we have to give back everything the government just gave us. So we spend $100 to create a new law, and then we take back all that money a few months later. So the people that implemented that law have zero incentive to do it. Now, taxing doesn't happen on this narrow of a situation. It doesn't happen within a single law that we don't pay for a bill and tax it. It's a much broader macroeconomic thing. But just for argument, if you spend $100 into the economy, why in the world would you tax $100 back? We spent that money for the greater good, for the public good, because we need this law implemented. We don't just take that money right back a few months later. That's no different than a brutal dictatorship going to citizens with a gun and saying, you will implement this law, you will fight my war, you will go to battle, you will build this building, or I'll kill you. Because I'm giving you $100, but don't you dare spend it because I'm taking it back in just a few months. What's the point? There's no point. So people can pay their taxes, but they have to give back everything that they were given by the government. They can't spend a dime or invest a dime unless they go into their own savings to do it. So a balanced budget is not a good thing for the people. A surplus. As a federal government, I spend $100 into the economy and I tax back $120. So now, not only can the people not spend, but they can't even pay their taxes unless they dip into their savings and investments. Why would a government do that? If that government can create its own money, however much it wants, whenever it wants, and for whatever purpose it wants, why would a government do that? And a deficit. I spend $100 into the economy and I tax $40 back. And now the people have enough money to pay their taxes, and they have, what did I say, 40? So they have 60 left over to spend and invest and put in their wallets. So a deficit is good for the people. So yes, there are some situations that we shouldn't have a deficit. But there are many situations where we should have a deficit. So a balanced budget amendment would be devastating and permanent austerity for the people, because the purpose of a government, a fiat currency, is to spend money into the economy so that things can be done for the greater good. And that money is an incentive for them to do it. The taxes, drive that economy, so they have to use the dollar. But that gives them the power to purchase things and purchase services. And if the government just taxes it all back a few months later, what in the world is the purpose of that? From a good faith point of view, and there really isn't. There really is none. So Clinton had a surplus at the last couple years of his presidency. I'm pretty sure it was the last couple of years. And I don't know the details, still need to learn this, but I'm pretty sure it's true that soon after that he left office in 2000, a recession hit because the government was gouging the people with this surplus by forcing them to pay taxes with their own savings. And on top of that, they couldn't spend a dime unless they could dip even farther into their savings. So that's the end of that section. So that is the deficit, surplus, and balanced budget, and the debt, all myths, all opposite world. Everything we've been taught since we've been born regarding these terms is just opposite world. And it's all centered around what Sherry said, that the central misunderstanding that the federal government is the same as us. Their economy is the same as the currency users. And it's just completely not. Next subject. And actually, there's only two things left. Social Security. In 1935, the Social Security law was passed, and it created the Social Security Administration. The Social Security Administration, the SSA, is an accounting agency whose purpose it is to determine how much each beneficiary should get, how much each senior citizen should get. And then they tell the Treasury, and then the Treasury pays the people. Okay? This law also created what's called a FICA tax, FICA. And this tax is paid out of your paycheck, and up to $200,000, I think, whatever it is, 5% of that amount, up to your first $200,000, 5% is paid into FICA taxes. And these FICA taxes are paid into what's called the Social Security Trust Fund. But as should be clear now, is no federal program needs income at all. And therefore, no federal program has a bucket of money from which it has to spend. So the FICA taxes pay into this trust fund. And this trust fund is no more than just like the tax returns that are sitting in a file cabinet. It is just a spreadsheet of the name and how much they've paid in their FICA taxes. They record how much it is, but that amount, that money, is never used for anything. It is most certainly not used for anything regarding Social Security. So just like tax returns, it is a notation of what taxes were paid. The trust fund, the Social Security Trust Fund, is a notation of how much FICA taxes were paid. But that money is not used for anything. It does not pay for Social Security because no federal program needs to be paid for. Not by taxes. So Bernie Sanders wants to, and I agree with him, that the FICA tax, the cap on the FICA tax, which is $200,000, should be eliminated. That cap should be eliminated because it is only paid up to $200,000. So if you're rich, you have $1 billion, yeah, you'll pay a tiny bit on your first $200,000, but the rest of your almost $1 billion, you don't pay a dime on. So yes, that FICA cap should indeed be eliminated, but not because we need the money. It should be eliminated because it's a regressive tax. Only the powerless are paying for it. The powerful are paying for what to them is a tiny fraction. But only the powerless are paying FICA taxes. It's a regressive tax. So yes, we should lift that cap. We should completely eliminate that cap. But what we should really do is stop all Americans from paying this tax. We should suspend the tax entirely. We shouldn't totally eliminate it. We should stop people from paying it. But we should still keep that tool in our arsenal because it may be useful just as another tool for inflation or whatever it is. Just like we have a wrench, we shouldn't be beating people on the head with it, but we shouldn't be throwing it away. So we suspend that tax. That's what we should be doing. No one should be paying for it because it's not paying for anything. So when you hear people say the Social Security is running out of money, or that these people want to steal from the Social Security, steal from Social Security, or steal from the trust fund, now you should know, you should understand that makes no sense, because there's nothing to steal from, because there is no bucket of money for Social Security, because when the Social Security Administration determines of what the benefits should be. It informs the Treasury, who every year creates, or every month, creates the currency to pay those people. So every year, every month, the currency is created to pay the beneficiaries. So it doesn't make economic sense to say that we are stealing from Social Security or that Social Security is running out. They might be pointing to the FICA Tax Trust Fund because the amount in this trust fund may not be as much as the benefits that we pay out. But as we now know, these are not dependent. Social Security doesn't need the trust fund. The trust fund is just a paper filled with numbers. It's not used for anything. So stealing from the trust fund is quite sinister. And what it really is just a way of working towards privatizing Social Security, destroying Social Security so that it is no longer run by the government and it is taken over by private industry so they can profit. But not only profit. So sabotaging Social Security, sabotaging NHS, which is the healthcare system in England, sabotaging the most social programs, safety nets programs, sabotaging the entire federal government. This is how it works. You do it by defunding and then sabotaging. And then a few years later, you look back and you say, oh my goodness, it failed. I'm so upset that it failed. We have to get rid of it, and we have to replace it with a private industry solution. And, I guess we're going to have to profit off of it. But profit isn't the only answer. Profit isn't the only answer. Isn't the only reason, I should say. Profit isn't the only reason. Because when we have our healthcare in private industry, when we have our Social Security in private industry, when we have our education in private industry, private schools, and no longer in public schools, not only do they profit off of us, but they also escape federal laws. For example, private schools are not subject to public records requests, or at least it would be very easy for them to fight it if they are. They probably could easily take advantage of that. We're actually fighting that in New Jersey right now. Private industry is not subject to public records laws. So it's not only profiting, it is escaping the law. It is putting us at the whim of for-profit industry. So that's it for Social Security. So I want to say one more example, which is Medicare for All. This is one of my favorite, profound, horrible examples. Yes, they want to profit off of us. They want to profit off of our suffering. They want to profit off of sickness. Profit off of our sickness. So they don't want Medicare for All because that would be free and no one would profit off of it. So they want to get rid of Medicare for All, the possibility of Medicare for All, even the Affordable Care Act, and they want to replace it with private industry so they can profit off of us. But it's not just profit. Yes, that's a big deal, but I think that's number two. Number one is they don't want us to have Medicare for All because if we did, then we wouldn't be chained to our jobs. And then we could leave our jobs and not have to deal with the abuse that we might be getting at our jobs, or the low pay, or the too long of a commute. And we could leave our jobs and still have our insurance if we had Medicare for All. And then we could run for office. And that, I believe, is what they really don't want. Excuse me. If we had Medicare for All, we wouldn't be chained to our job. We could afford health care, or not afford, we would have health care if we left our jobs, and we could run for office and take over their place. That's what they don't want. It's not just about profit. It is about keeping the powerless powerless and keeping the powerful powerful. And I learned this from Caitlin Johnstone, that power is relative. The only way that you can stay powerful is to keep the powerless powerless. And that's what all of these things are for. Yes, they profit off of it. But even more, they get the government out of the way. And they, private industry, becomes the government. The ultimate goal is not buying politicians. The ultimate goal is getting government completely gone so they can come in and replace it. So, conclusion. It is a travesty. Just a moment. It is a travesty that we choose to fund endless war. Let me start that again. It is a travesty that the United States government has endless war, excessive military, and immoral levels of income inequality. It is a travesty. It is a travesty that the United States does not give us Medicare for all and free college and a federal job guarantee and a living wage and fix our poisoned water. It is a travesty. But the biggest travesty of all, the bigger travesty, is that the American people have been tricked into thinking that we can't have all of it at the same time. Because we can. The United States can afford, has enough real resources to give us all of these things at the same time. They can keep their endless war. They can keep their excessive military. They can keep their tax breaks. They can let them have their toys. It's not a good thing, and it must change, and it must change as quickly as possible. But it is no less true that we could have it all at the same time, all of those things, and still have Medicare for all, and a federal job guarantee, and a living wage, and fixing our poisoned water, and all of those things. But the people have been tricked into thinking that they choose endless war and tax breaks for the millionaires, and they choose not to give Medicare for all and free college and all that. And they pretend that these decisions are linked together, just like the twins. We should be fighting against society's injustices. Endless war, excessive military, immoral levels of income inequality. We should be fighting as hard as we do, as hard as we can. We should be as angry as we are. We should. But we should be fighting against them because they are immoral, unjust, and wrong. We should not be fighting against these things because they're expensive. That's part one. Part two. We should be fighting for the programs that the powerless need to survive. Medicare for all, a living wage, federal job guarantee, free college, fix our poisoned water, and so on. We should be fighting as hard as we do. But we should be fighting for them because they are moral and just and right. We should not be fighting for them because they are affordable. But most importantly, we must stop linking these fights together. We must stop saying that the only way that we can get Medicare for all is by reducing our military, because we need that money in order to pay for Medicare for all. We must stop saying that we cannot have Medicare for all until we tax the rich. That we have to tax the rich in order to pay for Medicare for all. We want to use that money instead for Medicare for all. Because the truth is that we can have all of these things at the same time because we are the wealthiest country in the history of the world because of the real resources that are at our disposal. And what is so sinister about linking these fights together is, well, first of all, it makes no economic sense, as I hope is clear now. It makes no economic sense, just like the multimillionaire with the children. He can afford both to buy a present for both of his kids. It makes no economic sense that he couldn't do that. And it certainly makes no economic sense that they have to be pitted against each other to show who deserves it more because he can only afford just one. It it is class warfare when we link these fights together. That the only way to get stuff is to wrest the money from the powerful's cold, dead hands. It makes no economic sense, and it pits the powerless against the powerful. Class warfare, and that is a battle that the powerless will always lose. When we make getting money from the wealthy a prerequisite for getting Medicare for all and all of the things that we need to survive. The progressive movement fights 95% of the battle perfectly. We can envision and describe perfectly what is wrong with our system. We can describe with just perfect detail of what it should be, what the programs that we should have are. We can envision the world as it should be. But when we go in for the kill and we go and march on Congress and we say, we demand Medicare for all, and they turn to us and they say, I would love to give it to you. I know that you need it. I know how much it would help, but we can't afford it. How can we pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? And we go back and we analyze and we try and figure out exactly how we can afford it. And we waste our time trying to determine how we can afford it when it makes zero economic sense. So we demand all of these things from a position of economic ignorance. The vast majority of Americans do. The vast majority of progressives do. A small amount of progressives get this. We demand what we need to survive from a position of economic ignorance, and we let them trick us. And someone brought up a very important point to me, which I don't quite have my head around, but not only we have to expand our thinking beyond progressives, because I don't know if this is too much of a blanket statement, but just to say this as easily as possible, Republicans don't want these programs not because they feel like Medicare for all is a bad thing, but because some of them fear the short-term consequences of taxes. We know now that the reality is that no federal program needs taxes in order to be funded. But I'm going to say Republicans, just very roughly speaking, I understand that might not be, it might be too blanket statement. Republicans fear the short-term consequences of taxes, of more taxes. And they would vote against something simply because of new taxes. So that trick of being told that we have to get money from the military, oh, but I want to defend my country. We need to get money from the wealthy. Oh, but I don't want to penalize success. But also, I fear my business going under because of new taxes. So we need to not convince them that Medicare for all is what's best. We need to convince them that new taxes are not necessary in order to pay for these things. And in fact, that the federal government would spend money into the economy in order to make these programs, which means there's more money in their pockets. So we need the point is to somehow bring in the people that disagree with us on policy and educate them on the realities of our economy so that we can bring them closer to our side, because we're fighting each other on this tax thing that they fear the short-term consequences of taxes, and we're like, I don't care about the tax. Assuming the people that believe that taxes pay for things are like, well, I would rather pay more taxes so I can get health care. So I don't quite have my head around that, but that's important. So finally, understanding modern money means our politicians can never again use the excuse of, I know how much you want it, I know how much it means to you, I know how much it would truly end your suffering, I really wish I could, but I can't. I can't because of something out of my control, because of the debt, the deficit, money, responsible. But the truth is that they're using that as an excuse to hide the fact that they easily could, but they just don't want to, because they're paid not to. And after learning modern money, we can finally do what we should have done long ago, and that is to organize and to march onto Congress and demand Medicare for all, once and for all. And when our politicians turn around and they try and trap and trick and distract us with the inevitable, how are you going to pay for it question? Squirrel. Here is the only reasonable response. This is the only thing that we should respond with. We will pay for it by getting you out of office and replacing you with someone who will never ask that question again. And that person will do whatever it takes to get the job done. And then from that point on, 100% of our energies should be spent on making that politician's life a living hell until they either give us what we demand, what we need to survive, or they get out of office. The end. Let's see your comments. How long did I go? Hour and 41. So the real lesson itself was, I'll guess, an hour and 20. All right, let's see comments here. And unfortunately, I'm only seeing up to where it says, tie block. Can this be shown again so I can review it and share it with others? Of course, as soon as we're done, within a few minutes, it will be ready to watch. Yes, so Jack, just answer the question. Okay. Ty, I am so glad you're here. I wonder, did you start from scratch? I mean, did you really? I'm curious where you started from. I'm curious, like, what your frame of mind was, because, you know, there are a lot of people here that know it, and, you know, that's wonderful, of course, but what the really is special is when someone comes in that really doesn't know it. So I'm glad that you're here. I'd like to know more. Okay, centrist Democrats are not our friends. Centrist Democrats have just as strong an incentive to misinform us about modern money as everybody else, because being misinformed in the way that we are, which really, I really learned something tonight, that it really is centered around what Sherry said, that our government pretends that the federal government is in the same economic position as currency users, as me and you in our households, that we must get income before we can pay for something. My Jeff Epstein is with chocolate Cheerios as the profile picture. It used to be Kermit the Frog, and for a very upsetting reason, it is no longer Kermit the Frog after like 10 years. But right now, it's Jeff Epstein with chocolate Cheerios in the profile picture. So please friend me. I think we are friends. I think I friended you, but regardless, chocolate Cheerios, friend me and then private message me. Ty, missed the first half. Oh, then yeah, it'll be ready as soon as I stop within just a few minutes. Anything else? I can only see a few comments. I'm sure there's a lot more, but I'll wait around a minute. Jennifer K., thank you for making it simple enough to wrap my mind around. I appreciate that. That is exactly my goal. That is exactly my goal. Yes, I got your private message, Sherry. I will talk to you soon. I'm hearing someone saying no audio. It's actually frozen on my iPad. Oh, there I am. So let me turn it up just briefly just to see. Yeah, okay, I hear it. Hopefully it's just a fluke. All right, I'm very grateful for everyone listening. My goal is to make this better. I want to teach people one-on-one, especially when I have people interviewed, you know, a live stream with somebody else and let them ask questions. I would love to do that. If there's someone that's willing to do that, please get them in touch. If there is an administrator of a group that has a lot of people, please get them in touch. I would love to teach them. I'm especially interested in teaching, you know, leaders of groups that have a lot of people that trust them, because that's the gateway of teaching, you know, the people. So I guess that's it. Am I frozen again? I'm frozen on my iPad. Try this again. Yeah, it looks okay. All right. I am very grateful. Thank you for being with me. I am going to do this again next week. Hopefully it will be sharper and better. I'm going to get some more feedback this week, obviously, and I'll do what I can. It is really hard with how much there needs to be said. It is hard to think of what can be cut. I wish I could be with, teach people that want to sit with me and just listen from beginning to end and leave, numb and tired, but changed. That's how I did it. That's what was magical for me. Jeff Ginter taught me in February. But, there are different teaching styles and different ways that people want to learn, and it's just too big a subject. So it really requires dedication, especially when I talk to people who are dedicated enough to want to sit down and do that. But I know that there's other people that want to learn in different ways, and hopefully this will inspire other teachers to create their own ways of teaching it with different styles, because the more styles there are, the better it is. The more ways of teaching, the better it is. Some people like short form. Some people like visual, So, all right, I guess that's all. Thank you for being with me. I will see you next week. I have an interview on Monday with Marcus Farrell, unrelated to modern money. I think it's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be at 1 o'clock EST, and should be a very interesting interview. He's a candidate. He was the African American outreach on Bernie's campaign. He is running in Arizona for a state seat, and we spoke briefly, and it was really interesting. So I look forward to that, and I will be back next week to teach this lesson all over again. Hopefully it will be a little bit better. I believe I'm getting close to accurate, though. I understand there's some subtle differences with the pathway of how money's created and some other stuff, but I think overall, I think I'm getting close to accuracy, and now I'm trying to get, slicker. So thank you, everyone, for being with me. Thank you for all the kind words, and I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that I have not seen, and so thank you for all of that. I will look when we're done. Russell, thank you. You're welcome. Carmen, I will tell my boys that you said hello. Louder next time? Jack says louder next time. I honestly don't know how to do that. I have my iPhone earbuds, and that's pretty much it. And I don't know. Turn it up as loud as you can and maybe use headphones. I don't know. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for your not pirate statement. All right, I'll see you next week. Thank you for being with me. See you next time. And please feel free to keep on adding comments to this. I will be looking, and you can private message me if you have some more specific, detailed feedback. I would love to hear it. And I want mostly accuracy feedback. I am totally open to style and length and that kind of feedback, but obviously that I have to make it my own. So accuracy primarily, but certainly I also want to hear the other stuff of style, suggestions, and so on. But I have to balance making it my own. So anyway, thank you for being with me. I will see you next time. Have a good night. Have a great rest of the weekend.